Hey there, this is a review for Castle Crusades campaign, session 57. In this session, I had 5 players. We had Lork, Barry, Cosmo, Sprawl, and my buddy Steve was here playing. We picked up right where the last session left off. If you haven't watched that, spoiler, at the death of Ronan. So we picked up right at that scene. So the way we arranged it was Steve was going to play the NPC Oslin, the Deep Gnome, their guide through the Underdark, until we could introduce his new character that he'd been working on. So we pick up right there. They spend actually a little bit of time in character, remembering their friend, building a cairn for him because they know they can't take him along, his body along with them. Lork, they kind of divvy up his items. It's not so much in a murder hobo way we used to do as a kid where you just looted your buddy's body. Like Lork specifically takes Ronan's oath bow, and he has a intent and purpose for doing that, and he has a plan for that bow. I don't think he's revealed to everybody else, so I won't say it here. But we'll visit that hopefully in a later date. So they do that. They do that. They collect themselves. They move on. They're still in this land, this series of caverns called Mort Pestra, which is to the Deep Gnomes is called the Dead Caverns. Nothing grows here. Nothing lives here. They don't come here because there is nothing here. There could possibly be like ore veins and stuff here, but because of the nature of the place, the Deep Gnomes don't come here. They keep moving on for several hours. This is a very large section of caverns. And then they come to where the cavern, the tunnel they're in, opens up a little bit, and there's a gate, an iron gate, but it's been sundered and blown inwards. And this gives them a little bit of pause, and they push on. They still have the scouts out ahead, Oslin, Lork, and Cosmo, with Barry and Sprawl hanging back some because they can't be super quiet. And they push on beyond these gates, and it opens up into this very large cavern. And beyond the gates, they find to the right of the gate, there's a set of stone stairs that lead up to like a parapet. And they did realize, like, once they got closer to the wall, this gate and this wall, that there were arrow slits in the stone. And on the backside, they see, they definitely see these arrow slits. And then there's this staircase that goes up to a parapet. They go up and explore. They find more arrow slits. And they see set in the stone above the gate an iron door, and it's locked. They deal with that. Cosmo deals with that very easily, and they go in, and inside is a small chamber and 2 very long dead dwarves, and they're slumped up against the wall. They're in their armor. It's all old and rusted, and they appear to be Duragar. They're not quite sure what happened to them, why they're in here, but they decide that this is a great place. They need a place to camp for the night. They're going to camp here. So they drag those remains out, pile them up on the parapet, and then set camp for the night. They secure that door. Now they have a securable room that they can spend the night in. They do set watches. Nothing. We rolled randomly. I had the players each roll that took a watch. Nothing came up. So in the morning they get a rest, and they're able to push on. They push on further into the cavern, and in basically the center of the cavern, they come to a ruined tower, which is, you can't see it real good, but let's see if I can shift this over here. Right there, they see this thing, and Lork, Barry, and Lork, Cosmo, and Oslin go up to explore. Let me just bring the camera over here. And they come in up this entrance, and they see some dwarven statues along the way that are ruined, and there's one here near the entrance of the tower. The guys come up, the characters come up here, and they're exploring, and we'll get to this other stuff in a second. And they're not in here very long before coming out of this hallway right here are a bunch of dwarf-sized zombies. And they move unnaturally quick. Some of them are actually crawling along the walls. And they have this preternatural glow to their eyes. I had never used, this is a particular type of zombie called a juju zombie. And I had never used them before. My buddy Dave, who plays Barry, he knew what they were, but he'd never faced them. So he's like, "Are these juju zombies?" And I didn't neither confirm nor deny, I don't think, but because I generally don't do that in game. But yeah, he had never fought them before, so I think that kind of excited him. The other people, other players, I don't think that even I know had never even heard of them. I know my son, he had never heard of them. They're just a more powerful version of zombies. So they begin to fight. They get swarmed on. They start to fight. The rest of the party rushes in to help. Typically, when I use this type of terrain, like this ruined dungeon terrain, I almost always, I think, before this session, tell the players, like, these holes and stuff, it's more decorative. It's not like, I don't typically use it so you can actually pass through that stuff. It's more just to show that the place is a ruin so you don't get the same dungeon terrain over and over. I did not do that this session. And it was kind of, it wasn't on purpose. I forgot to tell them that. So when Cosmo, he has boots of striding and springing, which he puts to good use. He decides, because he gets hit a few times in combat and wants nothing to do with it, so he does like a fighting withdrawal and gets out of there. He says he's going to use his boots to bound up here, and I let that happen because I knew there was stuff up there, and I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. So while the rest of the party's down here fighting the juju zombies, Cosmo springs up here. And what he sees in this room up here is there's a dwarf sitting in a big iron chair. And there's this, I don't remember what it's called, but basically a thing with a book on it. And the book is really old, and like some of the pages are like falling out of it onto the floor. And as he's in there and he's examining it, coming out of the chest of the dead dwarf sitting in the iron chair is a wraith, a dwarven wraith. And so Cosmo decides that he needs to get out of there. So he actually grabs the book and jumps out. I think he got out of there because I think they won initiative. So he got to go before the wraith did. So he was able to, with his boots and his movement, he has good movement due to some advantages he took. He gets out before the wraith attacks him, or the wraith attacked him and missed. I don't quite remember. But he gets out, and then he actually flees all the way out. Like, he runs like all the way out to here. He uses this hole too, which I just let him keep doing that. I'd already let that happen, so like it was making it fun. Like, it was making it much more dynamic and use of the terrain even more than we normally do. So that was good. So the wraith comes down. The guys, the characters have been cleaning house on these guys. They've been taking some hits, but there was a couple that crawled along the ceiling and dropped down on Lork after he was circled around here to help Sprawl, who was taking some hits. And he gets two that dropped down from the ceiling, which was a nice little surprise attack. The wraith comes out, and at this time everybody's here except for Cosmo, who's fled. The wraith comes out, so I rolled randomly to see who it attacked, and it picked Barry. The dice landed on Barry. So it comes down, hits Barry, and I think I've said it before, but in my game, in Crusades, undead, powerful undead do level drain. I hate level drain. I've hated it since I started playing D&D over 40 years ago. I don't like it as a player, and I don't like it as a DM because I just find it, one, doesn't make any sense, and two, it really slows the game down as far as trying to figure out what you lose for your level and all this. So with that, I do ability score drain, and I take it from the Hyperborea RPG. So, and it's fairly substantial. It makes undead very scary. So he hits Barry. Barry fails his Constitution save and loses 3 points of Constitution, which does have an effect on him because it lowered his score to the point where he lost 7, because Barry's 7th level now. He lost 7 hit points automatically. So that happened. They continue to fight the Juju zombies. Sprawl steps up and tries to turn the wraith, and he's successful. This is important because I forgot to mention this. In the beginning of the battle, he tried to turn the zombies, the Juju zombies, and failed. So he tries a new turning on the wraith and is successful. Drives it out of this chamber. It flies right over Cosmo's head and disappears for like 10 rounds into the cavern. They don't really ever have to deal with it again. Ultimately, they defeat the zombies. Everybody's still on their feet. Some are a little beaten up, but they defeat the zombies. They go back up here to this area and loot this room more thoroughly. They find a chest underneath the throne. It's also locked. Cosmo opens it, but it also had a trap that he missed. The way we do that, like he checked for traps like a good rogue. But in the way we do it in our games is I, as the castle keeper, I make that roll for checking for traps. And I rolled a natural 1 on the roll. So it was like, yeah, you don't think it's trapped at all. That way the player himself is, there's no metagaming with it. So they don't know if they're right or wrong. I can give them some strong inflections as far as like, yeah, you really think that's fine? Or, you know, like the 1, I didn't oversell it, but it was like, yeah, no, you think it's fine because I rolled a 1 and he missed it. So everybody at the table is really cool with that. That's a rule we adopted fairly recently, I think. And everybody's on board with it, and it works for our table. So he gets hit with a poison trap. He makes his, I think he made his save. It wasn't a really bad poison. He took a little bit of damage. Not a lot. But they find it's full of gold. So they, you know, like all good adventurers, they keep that. And then they also over here find a set of stairs. They almost bail on this place. And then Lork actually, what's over here? And I'm like, well, there's a set of stairs going down. They didn't want to have to deal with the Wraith again because they knew it, you know, it took 3 points of con from Barry. And it was going to attack Barry again. But Sprawl turned it. So they didn't want to deal with the Wraith, and that's smart. So they're like, nope, we're out of here. So we got to get out of this place. This is not good. So they end up leaving, and they pass by they leave the tower. Oh, before we get too far, before they leave, they look at the book that Cosmo found. And it's basically the captain of this watch. This was a Duragar watchtower at one time. And it's the captain's journal. And it talks about the fall of this tower. And that something came from another realm with hordes. And that they were, initially they were, you know, we're going to defend this place. And, you know, nobody will stop us. And then it was like, oh, our best fighter, Azok, the Elf Slayer, was killed at the gates this morning. We're going to fight or meet Gog Drazen, which is a name I threw out. They didn't ask about it, and I know the guys watch this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on what Gog Drazen is, but he's referenced a couple times in the journal. And at the end, the final entry for the captain is that basically that they've lost and this tower is going to fall. So they speculate about what was that, because it was more specific things. I just don't have my game notes up. In the journal, as far as like, you know, from another realm and hordes and stuff. So they speculate, like, well, what could that have been? I mean, they've already encountered a variant mind flayer and stuff like that. So it's like they weren't sure, but they made some guesses. Then they leave. They pass through the rest of this big cavern with no problem. They do see like the Wraith. Wraiths typically, per the description of the book, don't like, they can basically be invisible, but I just for flavor described it, they could see it like floating around in the distance away from them in the cavern, and it kind of, I think, helped reinforce their belief that, hey, maybe we should get out of here, we don't want to deal with that. So they leave. They pass into this tunnel, and they travel for several hours. There's many, I describe it as like, you know, there's several offshoots, but Oslin, because he's a deep gnome, I've really been playing this up as far as the deep gnomes go, that they have a connection to the stone, even more so than dwarves do. Like, it's really very, no pun intended, a very deep connection. So he knows like the general direction of like where Binding Rock is, the deep gnome city. He doesn't know if this tunnel will take him right there, but he has a general sense of where he needs to go. So he leads them on, and they travel through the tunnel for several hours until they start to see signs of life in this tunnel, as far as like there's fungus and there's luminescent bioluminescent moss starts to appear, and eventually this gives them like, hey, we're on the right path, we need to keep going. They leave this tunnel and enter this massive cave network, and it's filled with fungal growth. Looking at it right there, but it's literally huge. Oslin, the character, knows this. Steve, the character, or the player, doesn't. So, like, I impart this information to them through Oslin that they've entered what is known as the fungal forest, and this is something. This is a series of caves and caverns and grottos that are, 50 miles in all directions. So, and that multiple different factions live here. It's a huge ecosystem for the Underdark, this area of the Underdark in my setting. And Oslin knows that there's, one binding rock is located here, it's hidden here, and that there are other factions here too. So they can't just, it's not safe, but they're on the right path. So Oslin leads them on in through this fungal forest. And he knows too, from where they're at, they're probably a few hours from Binding Rock, his city. So as they're traveling along, the scouts up ahead had them roll wisdom checks. I don't do this a lot. It's a habit I've broken from running a lot of 5e games, is making guys roll for everything. But I did this because I was trying to determine whether or not they would be surprised. So it was basically wisdom for listening. And they hear, I think it was Lork, heard it, and then he passed it on to everybody else. He could hear Goblinoid being spoken, and he kind of understood it. It wasn't straight up Goblin, it was Goblinoid. So there was kind of a mix mash of languages there, but he kind of understood it. And then when he pointed it out to Oslin and Cosmo, Cosmo completely understood it because he does speak Goblinoid, and they realize that it's bugbears, and they're complaining about being put on watch and not being allowed to have ale. So they like, oh, we got bugbears ahead. So they sneak up, and they find along this sort of path they're on that there are 2 bugbears standing watch. And beyond them, they have decent lighting here, because the way I described the fungal forest is it's like tons of like bioluminescent mosses and some mushrooms and stuff that glow. And Steve, a bunch of the players at the table play like the video game Skyrim, and he was like, hey, is it like I don't know what it's called in Skyrim, but there's an underground area where it is that, like there's glowing mushrooms and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like that. So to give them a more frame of reference. So they're able to sneak around. There are pockets of darkness, but like they have enough light to move around without having a light source, which is good because that acts as a beacon to anything that might want to hunt them. So they didn't have to have that, which was good. So they decide, without telling Barry and Sprawl, that they're going to take out these 2 sentries. So they set up. I had them roll a second set of stealth rolls. I don't make little game mechanics thing. I picked this up from my friend Kirk, who is an awesome Call of Cthulhu GM. I don't make them roll like every 30 feet a stealth roll, because it's just, 1, it's boring, and 2, eventually they're just going to fail that. So if they roll and they succeed, they generally get to a certain point where I just, like, yep, you make it there, no problem, or nope, you don't, if they fail. So they had made successful rolls to get up to the bugbears. I made them make a second roll to see if they could set up. They killed it. Like, the rolls were ridiculous. So they set up, like, Cosmo's like, literally one of the bugbears is like leaning up against this, 4-foot high mushroom or something, and Cosmo, being a halfling, sneaks right up underneath it, pulls out Eagle's Talon, which is a dagger that he got a while back, and it's specifically really good at backstabbing. It gives him a bonus towards his thief rogue backstabbing ability. And they take these guys out. Lork sneaks out on the other one. I don't think Oslin got a chance to do anything, and they just take these guards out, and nobody is the wiser. They see beyond the guards what they believe might be a clearing. So again, they haven't reported back to the other 2. They push on down to this clearing, and they come to the edge of it, and they find basically this. This isn't the board is the setup I use, but the miniatures are all in disarray. So it's not quite the setup, but they're set up on the PCs are kind of up here in this area, and they're watching, and they see these bugbears, and between all the bugbears is chained together are obvious prisoners. There's some Pecks, which are a subterranean race. Some of the party have actually encountered Pecks before in the Crystal Caves. There's some deep gnomes, a few deep gnomes, and there is a surface dwarf there, and they're all chained up. And they see the bugbears, and then over here, we use this. I actually made this board on the fly because I didn't really have one set up. So it was pretty simple to do. So there's a little spring, and filling up water skins at the spring are 4 not bugbears. They're smaller, leaner, and they have ebony skin and shock white hair, drow elves. So this is the party's first encounter with the drow. And a bug board going into this battle, it was one of those ones where I felt a little bit unprepared for because of the drow. I can run bugbears all day long, but the drow, because of their like magic and I didn't quite feel prepared going into it. Ultimately, it turned out really well. It was really fun. Like I got a lot of comments from like the whole group about what a great encounter this was. So sometimes, you're your own worst critic when it comes to DMing or anything like that. Anyway, so they see this and they're like, okay, we got to get the others. Like this is, and Oslin is going to go back and get the others. I have him roll another stealth check just to make sure he can get out, and he rolls a nat 1. So nat 1 in our game is always a failure. So he goes to get up. Some of the moss that he was, crouched on, comes free from the rock of the ledge, and he slides out and basically tumbles into this clearing, and all the bugbears are like, what? And it's on. So a battle ensues. I think there was a round where the Barry and Sprawl, I had them roll listen checks. I don't remember if they passed that round or they made it. The guys will chime in. They had a couple rounds. It was going to take them a couple rounds to get up to the party, so they were kind of out of it for a bit. Drow do drow things. A couple of them drop globes of darkness up here, which mess up everybody's vision. Oslin is in battle. The bugbears swarm. They actually try to grab him. They're not trying to attack him. They try to grab him. They want to add him to the chain gang of slaves that they have. This turned out to be a really tough fight, and I think everybody, including myself, thought it was going to go south for a bit. The regular goblins bugbears aren't much of a challenge, but there's this one here. There's a female bugbear, and she is the overseer of the bugbears, and she starts also like casting some spells. One of the spells she used later on herself was like mirror image. She has a heavy crossbow. She's shooting it at the party. Eventually, Barry and Sprawl join in. They come down. They just see this wall of darkness here, so they kind of work around it. The bunch of the guys are over here, characters over here, trying to engage. Lort comes down to help Oslin because he's in trouble. He gets shot by a drow with a hand crossbow. And if you know anything about drow, they love their poison. So he has to roll a Constitution save. He fails, and Lort goes down asleep. The same thing later happens to Barry. He also goes down. And when that happened, when those two went down, I think all of them, myself included, we kind of, like, the thought was, oh no, they're going to end up as slaves. And I know my son expressed that concern, and I think it was felt by the whole table, myself included. And Cosmo was the game changer in this. One of the things that happened before we get to that was when they come out of the darkness, the party works their way out of the darkness. The drow are not to be seen. They're not there anymore, and they're basically hidden. So Sprawl cast some spells down. He cast prayer. One of the drow was in that range, but he actually didn't get through the drow's spell resistance, so he wasn't affected by the negative effects that enemies get from the prayer spell. He was one I think that shot. He was the one that shot, I think, Barry with a crossbow bolt, and they shot it actually sprawl, and I either missed him. I know I missed him a bunch of times, and then I think he might have got hit and made his save too. I didn't put anybody else to sleep in the fight. I did hit one of the bugbears. Hit, I think it was a bugbear. Hit, it was a bugbear. It hit Oslin with a crit. I actually rolled a double crit. It's the only second time in almost 3 years I've done it. The players do it. As a matter of fact, Lork did it in this combat again, and now has the record for the most damage dealt in a single hit. He did 100 points of damage, which is ridiculous. He rolled a double crit, and it's max damage times 4, and he's fighting humanoids. So he's, as a ranger, he's really good at that. So yeah, he crushed it, and they ultimately. Before we get to the end of the battle, like I said before, Cosmo was the game changer in this because he realized he's like, we need to get Lork and Barry back up. Like, we can't, this is not good. Like, they're going to wear us down. And they're working their way through the bugbears and stuff, but the drow, one of them, one failed its hide, like it was trying to hide and it failed, so they were able to target. The rest, except for one, appeared because they came out to attack. And so it wasn't looking good. Like, everybody thought that they were going to wind up drow slaves. So Cosmo's like, we need to wake them up. So he drags Barry back into the darkness and is trying to wake him up. And he shakes him, doesn't work. And I had to read up on it because in the book it says it works like the spell sleep. So in the spell sleep, it says if you like slap them or they take damage, they'll wake up. I'm not sure I really like how that works for drow poison, but what I went with at the time. So he decides, nobody knew that. And so he decides to just, like, after the shaking didn't work, that he wants to poke him with his dagger. So for fun, because they were in darkness, I'm like, just roll a d20, see what happens. If you roll a 1, it's going to be bad, but because you can't see anything. You can't see your hands in front of your face. So he doesn't roll a 1. He pricks Barry with his dagger. Barry wakes up in complete darkness, but then gets back into the fight. Dave had studied up because he knew he had a spell in the waiting that he got when he reached 7th level that bypasses spell resistance, doesn't have an effect, which he was interested in because of his battle with the Mind Flayer Hunter in the previous session. He hits one of the drow with this greater dagger of fire and just messes him up when he comes out of the darkness. It was great. Cosmo moves down to Lork, and Chris, who plays Cosmo, does a great job. He rolled a d20 right off the bat, and he rolled a 1. And I was like, you don't have to roll because you can actually see Lork. Like, you're not fumbling around in the dark. So it saved him from stabbing his friend badly, which would have been funny for me as the castle keeper, but he didn't have to do that, so we skipped it. And Lork gets up and he's mad, and he just charges. I think it was a drow that was fighting Oslin at this point. It was a drow that was squared off with Oslin, and he just comes down, and this is when he rolls, I'm pretty sure it was when he rolled his double crit, and just cuts this drow in half from head to crotch and just kills him outright. The battle is won at this point. Like, they eventually wear him down. They defeat all the ones. The one drow never reappears. So they gather up stuff. They gather up a lot of stuff from the drow. The players above board, because they're all seasoned players, they know, like, even the lowest drow has magical gear, and it's no different in my game. They also know, or at least some of them knew as players, that this is great while we're in the Underdark, but when we hit the surface, all this drow equipment's just gonna lose its powers, and that's just how the drow equipment works. So they gather up cloaks and boots and hand crossbows, and I think some of the long swords and stuff that the drow were carrying, and they arm the slaves. They free the slaves, and the dwarf is a dwarf named Rennie, and I'm not going to try to say his last name because it's completely French, and I don't speak French. So, but it's French for black. I think blacksmith. Steve said, and it's Steve's new character, and he's from a area in my setting far to the south that the players aren't familiar with. And he tells them that like his party was captured while adventuring, and one by one his party didn't his companions didn't survive, and he was the only survivor. So and he was captured by the drow. So they free him. They agree to. He asked to join them, because going alone in the Underdark is not smart, and we needed Steve in the game, so it worked out. In character, though, Cosmo's very suspicious about this and not like overly welcoming of the new Renee, and which was interesting. We'll see what happens with that. But they this takes a little bit of time, but they gather this gear. Now the party has a better stealth option because they have like 3 drow cloaks, which help. They act like cloaks of elven kind. They have the 3 sets of boots. So now some of the more louder characters can move more silently and use stealth, and this will help them get through the Underdark because they're not even to the halfway point of where they need to be to find this piece of the rod of 7 parts. So they push on, and eventually Oslin leads them to this this wall in the cave, this massive wall in the cave. And he goes up, he says some words in his native language, which basically sounds like you're grinding a couple rocks together, and holds his hand out, and a section of the wall glows and then slides down. It's a secret door into this long tunnel that is strewn, halfway through is strewn with loose boulders. And he leads them in. The door closes behind them. They get to about the midway point, and as they're getting to the midway point of the tunnel, all the rocks come together and form 2 large earth elementals. And they bar the passage, and Oslin speaks to them a little bit, and then they move out of the way, and the party moves into Binding Rock, the city of the Deep Gnomes. And that's pretty much where we ended the session. We're going to pick up the next one in Binding Rock. That'll be in a couple weeks because I'm very happy that we've moved to playing twice a month. So we're getting a lot more accomplished. So yeah, that went a little bit longer than I wanted, but this video, but it was a great session. Cosmo reached 7th level by the end of the session. So we have 3 7th level characters now. It's taken almost 3 years to get there, but yeah, they're doing great. It was a really fun session. It was a good session too because obviously they've had some recent character deaths. So this one they got some loot, they got some good experience points. So I think as players it was apparent that they felt good about this session too, which is awesome. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys at the next one.